to The Truth in Its Art. I am your host, Rob Lee, and today I'm excited to welcome two distinguished guests from the Baltimore art community. First, I have an individual who is not only an artist and curator, but also the co-director of Current Space. His contributions have been pivotal in shaping the art scene in Baltimore. Accompanying him is a dynamic Baltimore-based arts organizer and designer. She is also a co-director at Current Space and plays a pivotal role on the board of the Bromo Arts District. Together, they have been instrumental in the growth and success of their artist-run hub, located in the heart of Bromo Arts and Entertainment District, Current Space. Please join me in welcoming the talented duo from Current Space, Michael Benevento and Julianne Hamilton. Welcome to the podcast.
Hi, glad to be here.
Glad to have you on. I like this sort of dual syncing with the both. Feel like so. As we get started, I always like to open it up with sort of the softball question. You have to do a job interview, and it's like, tell me about yourself. It's a version of that, but it's a lot cooler. So, before we get to like the main topics, I want to give you both the opportunity to introduce yourselves in your own words. I think how we introduce ourselves and how we present ourselves extend past the artist statement, extends past, what we might have in that official bio. So if you will, could you please introduce yourselves and, we'll go from there.
You want to go first?
Sure. Hi, I'm Julianne Hamilton, co-director at Current Space. And I am an artist, a curator, an arts administrator, a booking agent, and everything else that is required at Current Space.
Yeah. I'm Michael Benevento. Likewise, I do share a lot of the organizing events and exhibitions, concerts, planning how the space functions. We've been doing a lot of gardening out back, over the warmer months, and we both like to travel a lot. I grew up in Houston, and came to Baltimore in 2001.
Nice.
I'm a Marylander.
Thank you. And again, like I said, it's, I had most of it in there, but there's a few details that, weren't in there in that initial bio. So, you've fleshed out what I had. So thank you for that. And before we go into, deeper into sort of the ins and outs of Current Space and your roles and all, one of the other things I think that's important is sort of one of those early points, in our sort of arcs, hey, I remember this show that I really liked and I was like, damn, I'm going to be on stage one day. Or I saw this painting and that inspired me to go into, the arts. So, growing up or even, but probably growing up, I think that's more of the point. Is there an example or an experience or something that has had an impact on you that kind of, opened your eyes to art and creativity, performance, things of that nature? Or were there any spaces growing up that you're like, hell yeah, I want to do this if I have the opportunity? Tell me about that.
Oh yeah, I guess so. I guess the most related to stuff I'm doing now is, I guess I spent half my childhood in Houston and half in a suburb of Houston where there was a lot of construction work happening. And so as a teenage skateboarder, and we would raid the construction sites and build forts in the woods, or we'd build skateboard ramps. And initially we were we'd put them in the parking lots of strip malls late at night, or in the street or driveway. And eventually we found an old vacant lot with a bunch of friends, and we cleared all the weeds and set up kind of this teenage skate park in the middle of on a vacant kind of foundation in the woods. And that kind of shaped similar trajectory. It was this teen initiative that eventually got squashed by the city.
Right.
Then spawned a lot of other setting up skateboard ramps impromptu and strip malls, or I guess and eventually there were the the township built skate parks later on after like all these kids lost their skate park that they built. But yeah, I guess like it's kind of, yeah, similar with like current space, like occupying a vacant building, and then eventually getting ownership of it. But I guess, yeah, I kind of created a similar trajectory.
That's big. That's important. I want you to go next, Julian, but I definitely want to touch on one thing in there. Like I've mentioned sort of this in this podcast before, but sometimes it's just having the exposure and the experience around a particular thing. Like, when I was like 5, right? Podcasts did not exist. Like radio, sure, but podcasts did not exist. Or just talking to people and having interesting conversations. And one of the things I always look back at, which terrifies me now as a nearly 40-year-old person, is the notion of getting on stage. I was like 5 and I was an MC, for like, elementary school, preschool graduation. So just imagine me, but truncated, almost like a Funko Pop, right? Like really big glasses and just really smaller, but just going on stage. And it's something about that commanding and people listening to you. And just, I don't know, it's just, I look back on that terrified, but also like that was a fond moment. And I see sort of the crumbs, if you will, or the dotted lines to what I'm doing now.
Yeah, that's great. And props to you for overcoming that, I guess, and be on this kind of a stage. Neither Michael or I are super, super comfortable with public speaking.
Yeah.
Believe it or not.
It's a thing. I remember not too long ago being in front of a group of very wealthy people. And I had an award that funded a lot of last season's work. So having to like, hey guys, you know that money you gave me, and just looking at these folks that was like, you're a millionaire and I do a podcast, and kind of that and being very thankful. But I think I found sort of the just like, what do I know? You know what I mean? Like, I know how to talk about the thing that I do, and that's what kind of helped me get past it. But those initial nerves, and I'm very tall, so I'm like, how can I make myself smaller and hide? And I think once I just kind of just didn't really think about it and just did what I knew, like just talking about my thing, it made it so much more easy for me.
Yeah.
So for you, Julianne, what anything that comes to mind as far as like those early like points around creativity, performance, art, anything that comes to mind, you're like, yeah, that's one of those early points where I was like, oh, I like art, or hey, I like creative stuff, or hey, I like performance, or things of that nature.
Yeah, I was really lucky to grow up in a family that supported artists, and like art was a part of my life as a child. My mom painted watercolors, and she would always take me to museums or do lots of different arts and crafts projects with me. And those are some of my fondest childhood memories. Were like, she'd get like the good coloring book that had like complicated designs and like the big box of crayons. And we could like each take a page of that coloring book, left or right. And then I would show them to my dad and be like, okay, which is better, me or my mom's? And I can't imagine how he answered that. Like, who was he going to pick? I feel like he probably picked me out because he just had to say them were better. And I took it seriously.
That's great.
Something else I think about, an early memory that I see more now was also as a teenager going to different places where like bands could play. You could like see other teenagers bands, really, maybe college students bands, but that like DIY spirit and having a place to go and seeing what that meant for both like friends who were in bands playing, having somewhere to perform, but also having this community space for ourselves. Now that I'm doing current space, I just think about that more and how valuable that was and how lucky I was to have that in my town, in the suburbs in Anne Arundel County. So,
It's fantastic. And shout out to the throwback like coloring books. I still have I have a lot of coloring books in the studio. I'm recording from that currently, and I have some of my old art books. When I was younger, we didn't have a lot of artists in our family. I had like an uncle I never met. He passed before I was born, and he did like commercial art. And it was just like, oh, I'm gonna paint this billboard in the late '70s. And I was like, oh wow, we have an artist here. And unfortunately, none of his like stuff was there that I could kind of like go back and see. So I was kind of learning on my own of like what I was interested in. I was always a doodler, always sketching, always rushing through my test, taking my B so I can draw for the rest of the class. And every year, and I still have these books, every year, my other uncles or my grandmother would get me either art supplies, like here's an art book, how to draw comic characters or color pencils and things of that nature. And they're in the studio to this day. So like 30 plus years of being able to track, like, you always been creative. You always have been around it and interested in it.
It's great to have that archive too.
Yeah. So I want to move into a bit about like current space. So for those who are undipped, because this podcast is kind of everywhere, like a few other places. So for those who are undipped, what is current space? Mission feels weird. I don't know if I like that word. It seems too corporate-y, but what is current space and what is the mission for those who are undipped and unfamiliar?
Oh, I mean, I guess we've been in this building since 20.
I have no idea. You're jumping too deep. Never even heard of it. What even is it? Is it a
so we have
hardware store?
It's we have a gallery space and outdoor performance space and studios. And recently we added a bar function to the outdoor performance space.
And this year, 2024, is our 20th anniversary of existing, which is pretty exciting.
Yeah.
And our mission.
Oh yeah.
I mean, go ahead.
Oh, we've had I guess in the gallery space, we run exhibitions about every month and a half, typically the rotation, and then outdoors in the summer months, about half the year, or I guess half the year, spring, summer, fall, we'll run performances from some of it's music, some of it's theater, fashion shows, poetry readings, and book readings, all kinds of stuff, intentionally trying to create a variety of programming.
Oh yeah. I was able to visit twice in the last few months. I was there for I believe a Fantasy Machine, and my partner's kid walked in one of the shows, so that was really cool to kind of be there, posted up. I was like, yeah, fashion, we love it, and enjoying sort of the bar setup as well, and the food trucks. It was a great night. It was a great night. Had some great catfish, great show, great art, and even being there for sort of the gallery side as well. I was there with one of my friends, Adiel, and it's a great sort of place, and it definitely speaks to, at least from my vantage point, this is a Baltimore place. This has multiple things and it attracts multiple people, and that's the thing that really sticks out for me about current space. What in kind of looking back a bit in that 20-year history, sort of what has been sort of the impact and sort of supporting both the local scene and even sort of international artists, I would imagine. Baltimore has a lot of talent that comes in that it doesn't get a lot of juice and representation around, but I see so many dope people who have connections at current space. So speak a bit about that.
Yeah, I mean, I guess being around so long, we've worked with people over the years multiple times and kind of created a history. And it's, I think, some people who lived here moved away, and then when they come back to a town, they'll want to do stuff here, and vice versa. When people are, I guess with the performances, when people are touring, they kind of will pair up with somebody local, and that'll build relationships so that when the person here is touring, they'll have a connection when they go to other towns.
You kind of do that in the gallery as well. If we are showing an international or national artist, we'll also definitely want to show an artist from Baltimore, and kind of create those connections and also bring different audiences together. And then even just having the gallery open at the same time as outdoor programming, that really
creates different crowds for both events.
Yes, it's definitely like, using the Ghostbusters reference, almost crossing the streams here. And that, in seeing, like, when I was there, like, in those two instances, like, I think it was just like you guys just happened to be open when I checked out like the gallery space, and I was looking at the different like work from people. I was like, interviewed them, interviewed them, interviewed them. And then, being able to attend in the fashion show and having a whole audience of people that I don't really know, that I want to know, that I'm seeing like interesting work. And I wear Carhartt in like dirty jeans. I don't know fashion, you know what I mean? But seeing people that are makers and they're creating, and seeing sort of this avant-garde and this whimsy that is there, and this kawaii thing that's there. And I'm like, oh, okay, this is an area that I need to be more aware of and try to like open up a bit. And that comes from being there in that environment, in that scene.
Oh, that's awesome. We love that event. This past year was the 5th year for Fantasy Machine. It's a fashion show that Meg Beck puts together, and it just gets better every year. Like this past year was the first time we had 2 shows because it was so popular the year before that we were like, oh, we better have like an early show and a late show. We had to turn people away the year before.
I mean, I'm glad I was able to get in exclusivity. So touching on that actually a little bit more, like, what is I guess, like, the approach when it comes to sort of collaboration and working within the various scenes? Because it is a space, and there is like sort of timing of like, all right, we can only really do this person might have work that's out that's really great, but we can only really do this at this time. Or even in doing this, for using this as an example, this podcast, 2 years ago I put out 333 episodes. It's almost episode a day. Last year 170. This year I'm planning to do about 180. And it's just like, it's a time commitment, it's an energy, it's a resources thing. And I have to really think through that process. It can be all great conversations, very interesting conversations, but all don't really fit. What is that sort of like criteria that comes into mind as far as like events and showcasing work and things of that nature?
I mean, I guess there's like a lot of, we do studio visits and like organize shows, but we also take a lot of proposals in both the gallery space and the outdoor performance space, and work with other organizations that will like we work with Black Cherry Puppet Theater, and they'll do their Puppet Slam Witch, twice a year. In addition to stuff that they do at their own space. So kind of like helping provide a space for others as well. And then a couple times a year, we'll also have like programming meetings where we work with other there's a number of people who volunteer and like are interested in coming into doing like programming sometimes, and so we'll kind of get feedback from them as well.
We were able to do a lot more programming in the last couple of years than all the years before, at least outdoor programming, because we got a liquor license in 2019, and also live entertainment permits were finalized. So that
really streamlined things, because previously we would get a special event license for each event, which was very time consuming to navigate the permit process. It would take like a week or two of going to the permit office almost every day. And now we just kind of have that permission ongoing. So that kind of cuts that step out. So instead of, and like that process also limited to doing like 2 a month. Now we can do like as many as we want that we can keep up with, which has been about 3 or 4 a week over the summer. But
gallery is a little different though, because we had kind of a similar experience to what you're describing with your podcast cadence, where we wanted to have our exhibitions up a little longer, because it used to be more like up for just like 4 weeks and then change over?
That was like when the space first started, we were it was like a month-to-month lease on a vacant city-owned building. And so we were trying to jam in as much programming as possible. So our shows were like 3 or 4 weeks with like 5 days in between.
Yeah.
And so it's a pretty fast turnaround. And then we were kind of like realizing like, oh, our show's coming down before like
everybody can even see them, or
Yeah.
press can possibly write about them, or it just seemed like
it's
too much work to put the show up and pull it down that quickly. And so it was sort of a conscious decision to want to be able to invest a little more time into each show.
Yeah.
But then it's really hard because we look at the calendar and we're like, man, that's how many exhibitions we can have, and that's it. Like, how can we pick?
How can we do everything?
And I think that process is really challenging, deciding which exhibitions to ultimately have. And there's so many more great proposals and artists who we would love to work with every year than we can show. And we do kind of prioritize like diversity and variety. So it could be like, well, that person's their work is really great, but we already showed like 2 painting shows in a row and really want to show something else this coming month, or kind of considerations like that.
That's super important to have sort of this diverse array of, creativity of artists. I mean, when, having these conversations behind the scenes about, who's getting funding, for instance, or who's getting opportunities, it's kind of like, for some certain pockets believe, oh yeah, let's just, have this visual artist up there. We're just going to have paintings and that's going to be it. And then let's say, people who do, let's say, dance or movement art, or even like a podcast. Like, I'm not an artist. I'm not even considered in a conversation, but folks feel like they're not getting those sort of opportunities. So having something that is like transparent, that we are considering, just various different types of people who do creative disciplines and that fit within this rubric. I think that's really cool. And, going back to that sort of the crossover. It's like people who like paintings, they may not want to see a different type of, or they may not encounter sort of someone who does maybe a different discipline, but being able to have that and have the spaces, that sort of focal point, and bringing folks there is like, oh, I know that they always have good stuff here. So let's see this other thing that I might not know about. Oh, now I'm suddenly into this new thing that I didn't know about. Thanks, Current Space.
Yeah. And also like the people creating things, they're also like, might be in an exhibition and then like meeting other artists in different disciplines, or they influence each other, and like might be in a variety show the next week, and like kind of like encouraging that blurring of practices with like people making things as well.
Yeah, collaboration and the DIY thing, especially here, is big. It's just baked in. To like the things that we do. Is like, I'm going to figure it out. It's going to happen. And, so Current Space is right there in Bromo, in the Bromo Seltzer like area, Bromo Arts District. And, whenever I see like spaces, I'm always like, I hope it's something cool if I haven't been in there before. And then when I go and I was like, okay, cool. And this is one of the reasons why I was like, I got to reach out. We got to get this interview. We got to make this happen. And how does it feel? Like, what are some of the advantages and the experiences of being there in, one of the art districts, for one, but sort of right there downtown, right there on that, there's been an investment and focus in that area, I'll say, over the last few years. Now, COVID's been a piece of it, but over the last few years, what has that experience been like?
I mean, it's changed a lot. I mean, only in the last few years, like, I guess we moved into this building in 2010. And when we moved in, like, a lot of the buildings around us were vacant, and we kind of watched the buildings around us collapsing. I mean, like, a couple years after being here, we felt like the floors from the building next to us fall in like an earthquake, and like the elevator shaft fall off of a building into the alleyway. And like, And now a lot of the buildings around us are like construction sites or like apartment buildings. And so it's kind of, I guess, drastically changed in the last few years.
Mm-hmm. Because Current was in this location before the Bromo Arts District was designated. I think that being in the Arts District is like wonderful. I'm actually on the board of the Bromo Arts District, and I think that the Bromo District's done a great job of bringing these spaces together and letting people know that they're all here in this concentration. Because Baltimore is such a city of artists in general. But I think things like the Bromo Art Walk, which happens twice a year, really let people come out and see how much is going on right around us. And I think also it's really helpful that the Bromo Arts District provides funding to spaces for that. Like, they don't just suggest, like, it would be great if you did something. They actually provide the means for spaces to do it, because a lot of these spaces are they're more DIY spaces, and having that funding lets them actually like facilitate like really special free programming on those days.
Provide artist stipends. Like, a lot of the spaces are volunteer run, and so like if there's funding, like the artist performing can just get a flat rate versus like charging an admission to get paid.
And I think sort of like the two of you being artists, being, around that, kind of having that perspective, like in doing, this podcast and doing things that are offshoots of it, it's like you guys, that are in these sort of offshoots, it's like, it's hyper professional, it's hyper this, it's hyper that. And that support isn't there. It's like you're left to your own devices. And it's like, I'm bringing the audience, I'm bringing the idea, I'm bringing the programming. It's like, I always do a lot of things. And, being there and just kind of like really not wanting to leave when I was at Fantasy Machine and wanted to just hang out longer. I was like, actually, I would like to do an event here. That's the way that I was looking at it versus, hey, we have this lighting. It's like, no. DIY is more of my speed. This is more of my setup. You're around the people. You're, with the people. There's a bar and this place looks really cool. It feels like there's creativity here versus this buttoned up thing that just kind of is, it's a term that I use called artificial vibes. That those places feel like artificial. Whereas, my experience at Current Space, it hasn't. It feels like this is like a real vibe. This is a real like energy, and the people that are supposed to be here are here, and this is dope.
Thank you so much. It's something we think about a lot, actually. Like, whenever we go to a space where we're like, man, this place, like, it's brand new, like it has
nice stuff, but
or like somebody really
sterile.
cared about the arts here. They really wanted to make this work. And yeah, but if it doesn't feel right, we're like, why is that? And how do we make sure we don't do that? It seems like the worst case scenario to like have more funding and come out with the worst outcome.
I think it's
for us, at least.
I think it's
I think it's only time. I think that you can't, it's just like,
it's not only that. I think because like for most of our operations, we were like a volunteer run space. And it was more like problem solving, how can we get money to pay for things? Like whether it's just to like exist, pay the utility bills, like pay artists, pay like how do we buy our own time so that we don't have to work other jobs was like a more recent thing. And also like create jobs for other people to be here as well. Like we were like part of the getting a liquor license was to we're able to like hire other artists to be bartenders, and like we're able to like do events that like wouldn't necessarily generate enough money, like doing a poetry reading. Like we're not going to make a ton off of like charging an admission, but we could sell alcohol at it and at least make something that we could like pay for staffing and supplies and stuff, and like pay the give like a stipend.
Yeah.
I think like when you're talking about like vibe and how you feel in a space though, it like so much of that is like you can just like tell if someone cared about that place on a personal level and like thought.
Yeah. Or it's like problem solving on like how these things can exist rather than like creating this like, I guess it's more like problem solving how to like, yeah, like how the programming can exist versus like how do you add programming to like this like tool that you created, you know?
I hear you. And, I'm on a board at a place, and it's definitely, the liquor license is important. It's super important, and because it just opens up sort of, because we all run into sort of the cash flow challenges, or how can we do this? Can we afford to do X amount of shows, or something that might not be sort of like the poetry readings, example. It may not be the biggest driver, or you suddenly have to have sponsorship with someone who sucks, because you need to pay for a certain thing. But I think having sort of that liquor license, for sake of argument, or even like a screening option, because I do movie nights on occasion, just having something that is definitely a magnet, and then something that'll keep folks there and have them having that vibe, having that good time and enjoying the space. And I think even like having a liquor license, for sake of argument, you could just say like, look, we're going to have drink specials that are aligned with the theme of this artist's work, for instance, or the theme of the show, or whatever it might be, and get really creative, and people can show off their Epicurean skills, if you will, behind the bar. And I think it opens up so many different opportunities to see people do their stuff, and realize certain ideas. When I look back at the first season of this podcast, I had a friend on who made cocktails, and they'd been a bartender in the city in various places. And we were just talking heavily about sort of the artistry of making a really good cocktail, and being, the improvisation in it, and all of these different things. And briefly, we had like a special cocktail that I would get, and it was just like pre-made batch style. This is 2020. I'm like, send it over, send it over. This is great. You know, a mojito with CBD in it is amazing.
I got pretty deep into that this past couple of years since we got the license. I didn't really know very much about bartending before that. I'd like bartended at a Japanese like hibachi restaurant in maybe 2010 or 11, and that for like 6 months, and that was it. And then we were like, cool, let's open a bar as part of our art space.
Yeah.
What should our drinks be?
Yeah.
And I like got a ton of different books about it and just began experimenting. And I feel like I reached like a new level this past year, making like a milk punch, which was more technical, I guess. Had like a lot more planning to go went into it. But I think all of our bartenders are artists as well. And I think
it's like their fun day.
Yeah.
Like, my friends won't come visit me at my other job, but like here they can like hang out with me at work.
For some of the bartenders,
and then like also like watching some of the shows and seeing some of the shows too while they're there.
And coming up with like drink specials on the fly.
And events too. Like some of them have like organized events. And like
they're also contributing programming.
But I think that's like been a shift, because like when we first started, it was more like it was like a gallery space. Like we used to be on Calvert Street, and it was like a gallery space, and then we had studios upstairs, and we just kind of like divided all the expenses between everybody. And that was kind of like the studios subsidized just the gallery space. And then we kind of, I guess over time, it kind of like shifted models where we have studios, but it's more of like they're subsidized. It's more like an amenity that we offer. Like we're able to like, I mean, that kind of just pays for BGE, and like we're able to like, I think having like a range of sources has like allowed us to do like more experimental programming. So we can like, we've had like people also, there's also memberships where people donate like $5 to $25 a month, and that like and then we also apply for grants and the bar liquor license and the studios. And so, and then there's also like art sales, but like having that variety of sources allows us to not be like limited as far as like a lot of the programming that we're able to do.
It's dope. It's good. Which it kind of shifts me into this next question, and I think it's an interesting question where when we're doing so many things, and you both have talked about all of the hats, Julianne, you're wearing a hat currently, but with all of the hats that we wear, we're picking up other skills that kind of flushes out sort of the toolbox. Like, you know, I'm self-taught when it comes to this audio stuff, right? I've had to learn how to do some web design because I can't afford one and things of that nature. So, you know, what would you say are some of the skills like that you've been able to kind of pick up that, you know, in booking and working with folks and sort of, you know, curating maybe different types of events than you thought you'd ever curate before and things of that nature, or shows, for instance, and things of that nature. Like, what are some of those skills that you've picked up just out of necessity that you've had to kind of keep Current Space like rolling and putting out this ever-changing, very interesting, and I dig it. Like, you know, chatting with you has just been great so far. But what are some of those skills you picked up?
Big list, get ready.
Yeah, there's so many. I mean, in addition to just like the programming, there's like, I guess in 2017, so our first building, we were in it for about 5 years, and this one we were in it since like 2010. And they were both city-owned buildings that were vacant. And like the first one, it was like an RFP that the city put out for artists to occupy. And like after when the building was going to get demolished, we had to move out. And so when we came here, we were like, how do we not get pushed out again? And so that was the building here went up for like developers to bid on it with the rest of the block. And so we're kind of like, what is a developer? And like, what is this language?
Become a developer?
And so we talked to one of our friends who Marion Glebes. She helped us, like, she used to work for Mike Schechter and Station North and helped us navigate some of the like
even just the language. I was like, what is a soft cost? How can I list my soft costs? What is that?
Yeah.
What does this mean? This is a foreign language.
Or like coming up with a performa and like, just like, what is a
performa? Google pro forma.
Sources and uses. And,
but yeah, buying the building and basically becoming a real estate developer in a way was a huge new hat that was occupied a lot of our energy for probably like 4 years.
Yeah, like learning how to talk to banks and architects and structural engineers and like contractors.
That was not a hat I ever thought I would put on.
Yeah. And that was navigating fire safety stuff and to like
yeah, you also do a lot of things with the building itself.
Yeah, like
there's a lot of things that like what we had, like the plumber came to do some work on the bar, and he looked at like what Michael had already done, and he was like, "Nah, you just do it. I'm not going to do this." He's like, "You can do it. You don't need me." It was the plumber. Right?
Yeah, it was. I guess early on we couldn't afford to do a lot of the things. And so like the sprinkler pipe that for like the fire sprinklers ruptured under the parking lot and was causing a sinkhole.
Oh.
And so we had to like, it's not like a plumber thing or a a normal sprinkler company that would do that. There's like very specialized people who would do it, but they charge a lot. They were kind of like, if we come out, we're like $900 an hour. And like,
wow.
And so I was like, well, like, what if I dig it up myself and then you just put the little clamp on?
Yeah, you can't do that. You have to do the full thing. And it's like, what I'm hearing is such the vibe of like, I'm about a few weeks removed from when I first bought my house, and my house was a full gut. And moving in, everything is new, quote unquote. But I'm like, this was a flip. So, what was the care and the attention here? And you're buying your first thing, and I'm trying not to have the anxiety and all of that stuff of someone's going to hop my fence and steal my heat pump and all of that stuff, right?
Yeah.
I remember, because I'm not cheap, but I am very like oriented around there's a solution to this that's not the fear-based one of like, if you don't do this, everything is going to blow up in your face. And I remember, this is so ridiculous. I checked with a few different people. I got one of those cages that you put around the heat pump, and I ended up ordering it from Florida and having it shipped up. And then I bought a hammer. What is it? A hammer drill, and I bolted it to my pad itself.
Yeah.
And it ended up being about $350 for the full setup, and I got to keep the drill. And the average quote I was getting was $950, $1,200 to do the exact same thing. And I was like, I'm confident I could just do this. So anything that comes up at home, unless it's like electricity or something like that, can be dangerous. I'm like, I'm confident that I can do that. I feel like I picked that skill up, and having the confidence to, kind of figure it out. And it's, in essence, my baby. But the thing that is odd, if something were to happen, it not only affects my like living situation, but it affects my like creative situation, because both of these things are nested in this one place.
Yeah.
Yeah. Home ownership and building ownership.
I mean, that's shifted too. Like when we were on a month-to-month lease, it was kind of like, how much should we spend on the building? Like,
Any month it could be taken away.
and the first building we were in was in better shape. The building we're in now it had been vacant for it was a temp agency before we moved in. Or it was vacant for like a year before that, but before that it was a temp agency, and it was like there was a lot of weird work on it, and like and the roof was shot, and it was just like we had just been like patching it and just kind of like, oh well, we just won't use this room anymore, it leaks in this room, or like and so that kind of changed the dynamics a lot. It's like, oh well, like if we're not gonna get like pushed out in a month, like we could like invest more in like it's like, oh, if we had, and we also like when we got the building, we got a grant to replace the roof and like improve the fire safety and stuff like that. And so it was like which also like replacing the roof allowed us to like open up more studio spaces, because we no longer had to like not have the leaky room that we store chairs in or whatever.
Yeah.
That's different watercolors right there, I guess.
Yeah.
Yeah, it is like, when I look around like Baltimore, and like, I'm just really happy that you two are making it happen. If I'm being really honest about it, because I look around Baltimore and I see, like, I'm in East Baltimore, and I see like stuff that's just closed. And as I touched on earlier, when I see something like new construction, I'm like, I hope it's cool. I hope it's not like, loft style living. And it kind of bugs me when it does turn into that. I want it to be something where I like to go out. I like to see things. I like to, I don't say it as a bit, it's real. When I talk about this podcast, it's arts, culture, and community. I want to see those things intersect. And I think that's at the root of Current Space for me. Like, that's what I think of when I think of Current Space. And I see like places that are, opening, and then it might not be on a solid foundation, but you two are making it happen. So I applaud you for that, of like, 20 years strong. So shout out to y'all. So I got like one sort of like last real question, and then I got these rapid fire questions. And the last real question goes a little something like this. What's on the horizon, I guess? This is January, so we're right at the beginning of the year. What's on the horizon? Like, what are you excited for in 2024, in this 20th year?
I mean, we're planning like anniversary events.
Kind of all year, not just one.
Yeah. Yeah, and just I guess planning out the uh, exhibition schedule and figuring out like how programming the outside. I mean, last year was the first year that we had the whole season.
From April through October being the season.
And so just kind of like figuring out, like learning from that and like trying to figure out how we should structure it.
I'm excited about a lot of the things that we're going to be able to bring back this year because last year, because it was that first full season, was so much like things happening for the first time. And there were things that were coming back too, but there were a number of like things that might happen on like a monthly basis. Like a 16 millimeter film night or a different poetry reading or a variety show. And now it's like feels really good to be able to, I'm like, this week I'm sending out emails to all those people like, all right, that was awesome. Like, I hope you're still in to do it again next year. Like, what should our schedule be? And to kind of be able to start the year with so much more established programming and then like be able to fill in from there from that point and then like kind of scrambling is going to feel really good.
That's wonderful. I mean, having once you've gone through it, and I say that in doing this, like, I could talk to someone who's just like, I got nothing, bro. And I'm like, we're gonna get a cool conversation out of this. Or even in these instances where, and I've said this, and just when people ask me like, what was the thing that you were super happy about or excited about in this podcast, or what are the interviews that stick out? And, I did this month of interviews around like jazz music, and it was something I was trying to do for about 3 years, for almost the duration of the podcast until I actually accomplished it. So when it comes to doing something that's hyper curated, like I did 12 interviews across Baltimore, Philly, New Orleans, and DC for jazz musicians and jazz champions. And I was like, oh, I can put together a month that has a theme, and I can do it in multiple cities because I've done it. And having that sort of evidence, that referential like evidence, like, oh yeah, I can do this. Or we'll put together programming. Like when I think at another venue in Baltimore, I did like monthly movie nights. And I would book me and someone that was related to the film. So we did movies that were in Baltimore and were filmed in Baltimore. And we did this one movie, Hit a State, the Chris Rock movie. And obviously he's running for office and all of this stuff. I had a political strategist on stage talking about that with me. And I'm like, I'm confident I could put together something that's going to hit an audience with my own weirdness. So having that, exposure and that sort of confidence around it must feel really good.
Yeah, it's great.
All righty. So, and thank you. This has been good. This has been really good. Now it's going to get bad. It's rapid fire. So this is the rapid fire portion of the podcast. Got a few questions. And as I tell everyone, don't overthink these questions. What you said is what you said. So and you are timed. Just so you know. Kidding. So here's the first one.
Wait, who's going to answer first? If it's rapid fire, I mean.
Or we could do, since you two are a team, that's the thing. You two are a duo. You can say Bing buzzer or whatever, like and in the form of a question. Okay. However you guys want to go with it, I'm fine with it. I'm good with it. This is we're
it's a race.
All right. We're gonna tight ship here. It's fine. So this one is going to be pretentious, but I think it's funny. How do you stay current?
Oh, you go ahead, Michael.
I mean, we work with mostly living artists, and like, yeah, I guess we're constantly, and also like reflecting on what we do too. There's like we're like, yeah, doing, yeah, I guess
yeah. We're almost exclusively. There's a really sad exception right now. We are actually we just hosted last Sunday the memorial for Elena Johnston, who was a good friend of ours and also an artist who had a studio at Current Space, and we have her work up right now. And we actually just decided that we're going to keep it up. So when this podcast comes out, if anyone listening wants to come by and see Elena's work, it'll be up for a few more weeks. But that's a pretty rare exception to that living artist rule, where usually we want to really be supporting people who can be directly benefiting from that support, and also like showing work that they're making right now, as far as how far out we're booking things and whatnot.
Thank you. So earlier, the traveling was mentioned as a thing, as an interest. So I want to travel more. I've traveled, and I always do certain things when I travel. Like, as my partner says, she's like, "Where's the rosé? I need the coffee. I don't care about the room." That's her. Me, I'm the same. So when you're traveling, you're visiting a new place, sort of what is the first thing, or within that list of first things that you got to do? Let's say you've checked in and all of that stuff. You've done all of the required things, but is it, I got to find like, where the coffee shop is, where are the museums, where's the bars, or whatever it is. I look for the neighborhood because I think it's a confluence of all of that stuff. But what is the first thing that you do when you're traveling to a new place?
You're like, before even getting there, there's spreadsheets.
I know. What do you mean when you get there? You don't have it on your spreadsheet, Rob?
It's good. It's good.
Like what you just said about the neighborhood, we do look for arts districts and maybe like contemporary art spaces. And if we make that, if there's, say, a space that someone's recommended, and this would be more, for city travel, but if we're checking out a cool gallery, and if you go there first, you can also ask people there, like, well, what else is cool? Now that I'm at one, like, kind of cool spot, like, where would you eat dinner? What's happening tonight? And we've seen that happen here too. Like there's one time these like German people came through. They just found us on
Do DIY. They're like squatter punks, like woofing across the US.
And they just walked in, we were open, and then they were like, well, what else is in Baltimore? And I don't know, we just like kept chatting with them, and they ended up staying at our house for a few days, and then
we stayed with our friend in New York, and they came with us, and we slept at their house, and it was a whole.
Those are things. Okay, no, we haven't ever like gone to another city with somebody based on like visiting a gallery, but we have.
I guess you find like similar personalities too. Like, oh, this person reminds me of like this person from Baltimore too.
Okay, but we got in trouble with that once because we were in Iceland, and we were like waiting in line to get a slice of pizza after the bars closed. So like everyone who leaves, pours out, goes into this line for pizza, and we're in line, and the person in front of us, we start chatting with him, and he has a recording studio, and he like reminds us of our friend here who has a recording studio. And in our mind, he's like, it's like, oh, that's just like, that's our friend, but like this version of him in Iceland. So like we already know him. And then
he's like, oh, I'm having a party at my recording studio. Do y'all want to come?
We're like, yeah, of course. Sounds great. And so we go with him, and then it's like, well, it's not a party. It's just us. That's kind of weird.
And it's like not really in the city. It's like near the airport.
I'm like, well, we're pretty proud of the city, and this person actually like isn't Jared. It's actually a stranger. We're the outskirts of the city, and we're the only people. And like,
and he kept talking about how like he's like, there's like no crime in Iceland, but I'm
not Icelandic. I'm German. And, there's only like one murder a year, and I come here once a year. And I was like, is this a quiz? Like, is this a quiz? Is this like a actual horror movie where like he's gonna give us 3 strikes and then we're out?
And his sweater had skulls on it.
Yeah. No.
I showed you guys all of the signs. What are you doing?
So we left. Many other times, like we have made made friends and formed connections by checking out an art space as
Okay.
one of our first stops.
That's
Outside of our spreadsheet list, of course.
that's really great. That's amazing. So I got two more. You touched on pizza a second ago, and I happen to have this question in here. What is your favorite pizza topping? Like, if you could only pick one, what is the topping?
That's a combination count.
You're cheating.
I think a
Hawaiian
Hawaiian with jalapenos.
Hawaiian regular.
Okay. I'll accept that. That's the style that makes sense. Yeah, I'm here for it. I have, if I ever get into a space, like I've had coffees named after me and cocktails named after me, or the podcast, what have you, I want to get to a spot where I have a pizza named after me. I have a very pretentious pizza order. It's fake healthy. It's like broccoli, spinach, blue cheese, extra cheese. Like, that's just, your stomach is having questions. Your stomach has, like, who must I talk to? That's great. Hawaiian. I'm here for it. So okay, this is the last one. If you could have one superpower, let's not be smartasses here. If you could have one superpower, what would superpower be?
Flying.
Not me. Whenever I have dreams about flying, I'm always flapping like a chicken, and it's like really hard work. So I feel like if I wished for that, that's somehow what I would end up with. So exhausting flapping around.
I just flew away from Iceland, and boy, are my arms tired. I just
Yeah. Flying's a good one though. Maybe just more like what's the Harry Potter apparating?
Okay.
I don't even want to fly. Don't fly. Just like pop to a new place. I guess that kind of ties into travel too.
I want invisibility because I enjoy the tea. I'll say that. I'm just like, oh yeah, just here. Oh, what did you say? Hey, who's that large shadow right there that's invisible? What's this? So that's pretty much it. You guys are off the hot seat for this rapid fire portion. It's a lot of fun there. So as we close out, one, I want to thank the both of you for coming on and making the time. We got it. We made it happen. And two, I want to invite and encourage you in these final moments to share the social media, the website, all of that good stuff for folks to follow and check out Current Space. So the floor is yours.
Sure. You can find us at currentspace.com, on Instagram at currentspace. We have in our link in bio on Instagram or on our website, you can find information about how to become a member. Gallery hours over the winter are generally on Saturdays, but check our website. Saturdays from 1 to 5 p.m., but check our website to make sure that there is an exhibition up. And once the weather warms up, we'll be open again from Wednesday through Saturday from 5 to 11 p.m. typically. But that's again, so to check the website. There's certain nights of the week that we have admission events. Other nights are free, but that's all on our calendar.
And there you have it, folks. I want to again thank Michael Benevento and Julianne Hamilton from Current Space for coming on and sharing a bit about their journey and their perspectives. And I'm Rob Lee, saying that there's art, culture, and community in and around your neck of the woods. You've just got to look for it.